We've come to the end of section 5, which was the section dealing with dissolution. And this dissolution was essentially about dissolving the attachment to our notions, dissolving the attachment to our belief, dissolving our belief in our notions. And you might think, well, what notions have you got? You don't suffer from notions, but we operate according to notions. Notions about who you are, notions about the world that you live in. These things are taken as obvious. It's so obvious you wouldn't even want to question them. And you probably can't even relate to what I'm saying, because you take notions like, I have a body, for granted. You take notions like there's a physical world out there with people in it, with objects in it. You take all that for granted, don't you? These are the notions which need to be challenged. These are the notions which you don't want to be challenged because they're so obvious, aren't they? But that's what dissolution's about. It's prizing these things open, like prizing off limpets on a rock and emptying out the insides. So section 6 is the section dealing with nirvana. Valmiki said, the sage Vasishta had concluded the teaching contained in the Upasama Prakaranam. That's the section dealing on dissolution. And he uttered the words, O Ram, you have heard the Upasama Prakaranam. Now hear the section dealing with liberation. All the kings and the sages who were seated in the court were deeply absorbed in the great Vasishta's discourse. With their attention totally riveted on his words and gestures, they appeared more like figures in a painting than actual living human beings. In fact, it seemed that even the sun, the air, the birds and the beasts, the entire nature was absorbed in intently listening to the sage's discourse, with their souls absorbed in the sublime exposition of the nature of the innermost self. So that's what it's about, the innermost self, which is awareness, consciousness. As the sun was about to set, the palace suddenly resounded with drums and trumpets. For a few moments this sound drowned the voice of the sage Vasishta. There's something quite realistic about this passage. It's very easy to imagine this happening somehow. When the sound of the drums, trumpets and conches died down, the sage asked Ram the following question. Vasishta said, I have thus provided you with a net woven with words, which are indicative of the highest truth. Tie down the bird of your mind with this net, and let the mind then rest in your heart. So Vasishta's not been given Rama words to play around with. He's not been given him words to form mental structures with. These words are being used to dissolve our mental structures, to dissolve our notions, and to point us inwards to what's called your heart, which is your essence. We can rest there. This is where we can direct the attention, not to the heart, but to itself, because the attention is the heart of our awareness. Attention sounds a bit boring and mechanical, but this is what we need to look at, because this is the great miracle. Attention is a great miracle. Thus shall you attain self-knowledge. O Ram, have you absorbed the truth imparted by me, although it is mixed with varied expressions and illustrations, even as the proverbial swan is able to separate milk from water when these are mixed together and to drink the milk alone. There's a lot of sifting through that we've got to do. And this is what I'm attempting to do in these videos. There's stuff that we can find useful, there's stuff that we need to reject. There's stuff which is merely the dressing, and there is stuff which is pointing us to the essence. This is what we have to discriminate. You should contemplate this truth again and again from beginning to end. Reflect upon it, and you should march along this path now, O noble one. It's very hard to remain established in this awareness. Our mind takes us out of it, but the Yoga Vasishta and texts like it direct the mind back. They remind us through encouraging us to contemplate what it is that we're allowing the attention to get lost in. Though engaged in diverse activities, you will not be bound if your intelligence is saturated with this truth. Otherwise you will fall even as an elephant falls from the cliff. Again, if you conceptualize this teaching for your intellectual entertainment and do not let it act in your life, you will stumble and fall like a blind man. In order to reach the state of perfection or liberation taught by me, you should live a life of non-attachment, doing what is appropriate in every situation as it reaches you. Rest assured that this is a vital factor in the teachings of all scriptures. Given leave to depart, all the kings and the sages of the assembly left for their abode. They contemplated Vasishta's teachings and discussed it among themselves, spending only a couple of hours in pleasant and deep sleep. So living a life of non-attachment, not being attached to what presents itself through the senses, or what apparently presents itself to us through the senses. There's just stuff going on, but that stuff provokes us into reaction, provokes us into wanting some of it and rejecting others or other aspects of it. Non-attachment is simply being able to observe this, to witness it without getting taken in by it. And that includes emotions and feelings, sensations, all that stuff's going on. We'll be moved away from our focus now and again, but we keep coming back to it. The secret to spiritual practice isn't about remaining in a particular state. It's about being able to keep coming back to that state, no matter what happens. We don't simply remain in the state because that's not possible. We need to be able to keep coming back to it. This is the effort. This is the effort of spiritual practice.